Hello, I'm Astrid.
And I'm Fred.
Thank you for downloading our podcast. It's Tuesday, the 21st of January 2009, and you are now listening to Radio 1. Coming up, looking back to the past, how the civil rights movement set a milestone in history, and whether the human rights situation of Afro-American people today has improved or not.
I have a dream that my poor little children will one day live in a nation where they will not be judged by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character. I have a dream today.
What used to be unthinkable 50 years ago is now reality. Today, the entire world welcomes with great excitement Barack Obama as the first African-American president in US history.
But looking back to the past, where black people were suppressed by segregation and racism, how was it actually possible that the most powerful office is now held by an Afro-American? That actors and writers like Halle Berry and Toni Morrison could win the Oscar or even the Nobel Prize for Literature?
Well, to answer this question, Fred, we need to go back to the 1950s. The doctrine of separate but equal ensured that a white society could still call the shots. Segregation in schools, restaurants, and public transports were common practice and more or less obeyed. But not for Rosa Parks, who was the trigger for the Montgomery bus boycott. She refused to obey and to give up her seat on a bus to a white man. Her arrest in Montgomery, Alabama, became the actual start of the civil rights movement, as more than 40,000 Afro-Americans stopped to use the public transport system for more than a year, causing an immense financial loss for public buses. The National Association for the Advancement of Colored People, the so-called NAACP, finally took legal actions and even won. The Supreme Court confirmed that the bus segregation was against the Constitution and abolished this law. From that day on, the first step of the movement was taken.
And now it's time for the shout-out!
Who was in charge of the organized protests which led to the boycotting of a public transport system? Was it A. Malcolm X,
B. Martin Luther King Jr.,
or C. John F. Kennedy? Shout it out, you got 3 seconds. And the answer is B. Martin Luther King Jr.
The 26-year-old Baptist clergyman was not only the leader of the Montgomery bus boycott, he also founded the Southern Christian Leadership Conference. Mainly inspired by his Christian faith and Mahatma Gandhi, he supported the idea to fight against racism by non-violent methods. King's unforgettable "I Have a Dream" speech in 1963 was finally the peak of the civil rights movement. More than 200,000 Americans joined the demonstration for equality on the so-called March on Washington. The event therefore became a real success and captivated an entire nation. All the more, it was a huge loss for the civil rights movement when Nobel Peace Prize winner King got assassinated in '68. Thanks to Martin Luther King's success, President Lyndon B. Johnson finally abolished the law of segregation in 1964 totally.
Nevertheless, there were also civil rights activists who were, unlike King, in favor of using violence to achieve their aims. Malcolm X, member of the Nation of Islam, represents the black slums and ghettos in Northern America. His aim was not to integrate black people into white society, but to enforce an independent Afro-American society by fighting for the rights with every means, including violence. Yet, although Malcolm X spread a rather extreme message, he found many supporters who applauded him when he started to denounce white people. Instead of following King's idea of non-violent integration, more and more blacks now called for black power and founded organizations such as the Black Panthers. Because of the assassination of Malcolm X, this kind of movement was not maintained for that long and finally disappeared in the 1970s. Hang on, Fred, there's a telephone call from Germany.
Hello, Radio, I'm speaking. Whom am I speaking with?
Hello, here's Sandra.
Hello, Sandra.
Well, I just wanted to say I love your podcast and I listen to it every week.
Well, thank you.
To tell the truth, I am bound to say that the civil rights movement was indeed a milestone in history, but apparently it did not reach its goals. Today, blacks are still discriminated, especially in the South. Organizations like the KKK still have loads of members. Not only are there a lot of racists, on average, Americans with a darker skin color get a smaller income for the same employment. And even worse, more than 40% of all US prisoners who face the death penalty are black. even though they just make out 12% of the total population. That's incredible! And just think of the recent case of Mumia Abu Jamal. He has been imprisoned for more than 27 years now, and he is still denied a new intake of the process incurred. He is a clear victim of a racist judicial system. So there is still a vast need of change.
You got a point there, Sandra. Thank you very much for your comment. And dear listeners, also thanks to you for listening to Radio 1. We hope you enjoyed our podcast, and don't forget, next February is Black History Month. Last but not least, we also have a little quiz for you, so keep your ears open.
Now you can hear it in the morning, and you can hear it in the evening. Black man and white woman shouting. Them in the group and them is moving. And you can hear them saying, Barack Obama, Barack Obama, Barack